Peace, y'all. Laissez-faire. Just wanted to talk about something really quick. And it's something that I'm sure you've heard a lot of libertarians and anarchists say, but I'm going to explain it a little more in depth. So I'm sure you've heard a lot of libertarians and anarchists make the claim that when you vote, you are giving permission or consent or acquiescing to the state to be ruled over. And most people who say this are coming from a moral stance, that this is more symbolic than anything. But they are onto something way more than what they even realize by saying these things. There are two kinds of contracts: implied contracts and expressed contracts. Expressed contracts are the ones you're familiar with. They're the ones that are written out on paper. Implied contracts are a little more tricky. I'll give you an example. If you step into my home, you have to follow the rules of my home. It's my jurisdiction. It's my private property. And I can regulate it any way I wish. And so, you never signed a contract when you stepped in my door, but by stepping in, there is an implied contract there that you're going to follow my rules. And so, what y'all have to understand is the state uses these implied contracts constantly. And this is why they're able to hold you accountable to victimless crimes. We have to understand that a crime is under the common law. Under the common law, there's only a claim, or a charge as you're calling them today, when there's an injured party. There's no injured party in these cases that you're going into court for today, these victimless crimes. They claim that, the state is the injured party. The state of versus you. Okay, we'll put the state on the stand. According to the Sixth Amendment, you have the right to face your accuser. Tell me how you can face your accuser when it is an entity. You can't. So you have to understand these courts are commercial. And they're operating under a very, very strange jurisdiction, one called Maritime Admiralty. That's the jurisdiction, the congressional jurisdiction in which all of these municipality agencies are operating under. And it is not law. It's all code and statutes. Statutes are not law. Statutes are for regulating the public. There's a public and there's a private, and they do not mix. When you go get a driver's license, when you get registered to vote, when you use Federal Reserve notes to pay for things, these are all considered benefits and privileges by the state and are considered a minimum contact for putting you into the synthetic artificial jurisdiction of maritime admiralty law, commercial law. We really got to understand this stuff. We're not going to get the prison industrial complex. We're not going to get the policing system. We're not going to get anything in this system that has to do with money without getting this sort of stuff. By accepting benefits and privileges from the state, you are agreeing to be regulated. The state, or the government, is the United States. At the founding of this nation, people understood the difference between the states, the United States, and the United States of America. The states is the 50 states, the land itself. The United States of America is the union of all of those states. The United States is Washington, D.C. The 14th Amendment created U.S. citizenship. By becoming a U.S. citizen, you are agreeing to becoming part of the public. Washington, D.C. is the public. Anything having to do with the federal government is the public. By accepting benefits from the public, you are constituting yourself as a U.S. citizen. Now, if U.S. citizenship was created with the 14th Amendment, what were you before the 14th Amendment? You were an American citizen. U.S. citizen is spelled with a lowercase c. American citizen is spelled with an uppercase c because it's a proper noun. It's denoting a specific citizen. You. American citizens are under the common law and constitutional law. U.S. citizens are under statutes, policy. Policy is for a company. U.S. Code Section 3002, subsection 28, I'm pretty sure. If you look that up, I'm sure you'll find it. It defines the U.S. or the United States as the federal corporation. You have to understand Washington, D.C., the United States are the same thing, and they are a corporation. By declaring yourself a United States citizen, by getting registered with this, that, and the third, you are establishing a contractual relationship between you and the United States. In reality, you live in the States, not the United States. But you're creating a relationship between you and them by accepting federal government benefits and privileges. I brought this term up before. Look this term up. It's a minimum contact. It's what pulls you into a foreign jurisdiction. If you're an American and the French government comes to you and wants income tax or wants tax money from you, then your response is, I'm not a Frenchman, I'm not in your jurisdiction. But if you're an American citizen and you have a business in France and you're selling your goods and services in France for French currency, and the French government comes to you and says, we want taxes, you owe it to them. You're using their shit. You're using their notes. It's the same thing with the Federal Reserve. You're using their notes. This is why people say there's no law that you have to pay income tax. Yeah, there's no law. Because it's all contractual. It's all based on contract. You're using their notes. They've set a bunch of rules for the use of their notes that if you're going to use them, you got to follow. This is why the separation of public and private is so important. In fact, when we was using gold, they weren't getting no fucking tax money like that. They're getting tax money like that now because we're using their notes. And it's not just about the taxes. It's about the jurisdiction. When you use their notes without clarifying with them that you're being forced to using them, when you're using their notes, when you're getting registered with them, you are creating a minimum contact. That's what makes a foreign state decide that you are a part of their state, even if you're foreign. And this is what's going on, is you are foreign to the United States in reality. But they consider you a U.S. citizen because you're accepting U.S. benefits and privileges. It's a minimum contact. Look up that term. And so why is all of this so relevant to voting? Because when you vote, when you go register to vote, you're making yourself a U.S. citizen. Now you're subject to statute. Goodbye, Second Amendment. Goodbye, your amendment rights. Your Bill of Rights. Goodbye. They don't apply to you anymore. Those apply to Americans. Why was slavery a thing for the first 100 years of the Constitution? Because the Constitution applied to American citizens and indigenous people, or the people who were being enslaved, or Irish immigrants. They weren't U.S. citizens, so they didn't get the rights of the Constitution. And now, they weren't American citizens, so they didn't get the rights of the Constitution. And so now, you've made yourself a U.S. citizen. You've put it on paperwork. You've checked the box, yes. You got a driver's license, and you've never clarified with them. You only have it because you're being coerced into getting it. Because there's all you gotta understand, there's all contract. And a contract, if you're being coerced into it, If there's not a meeting of the minds, as the UCC says, then the contract is void ab initio. It is never valid. You were coerced into it. But the thing is, if you don't call that out, it's not like that. There's a Roman axiom of law: he who can be deceived, let him. In American law, you have to enforce your own rights. If you don't know where to find your rights, you don't got them. Your rights are on the private side. By getting registered, by doing all this crazy government shit, you're making yourself a U.S. citizen in the public without constitutional protected rights, without private rights, because you're making yourself public. You got to learn how to be in the world, but not of the world. How to use trade names and businesses to get your benefits and privileges from the federal government. How to use trust. How to use managers to go get this permit or license or whatever. Got to learn how to be in the public, but not of the public. You are private. The private is the real side. The private side is God's side. That's where everything tangible is and comes from. The public side is the side of fiction. Legal fiction. Look that term up. Entities are legal fictions. Corporations, trust, entities. These are legal fictions. That's what the public is. A U.S. citizen is a public citizenship. American citizens are private. They've got to learn this public and private thing. By getting involved in the political process of voting for this, that, and the third, you're making yourself public. Now, I do know there is a proper way to vote in these corporate elections while retaining your private inalienable rights and private status. Status is a private individual, not a public person. But I'm not aware. I don't know. I don't fucking recommend it. It's pointless. There's no point. Voting for Joe Jorgensen, you're just going to have to return to the counter economy anyways after the election and fucking Trump or Biden is put into office. Either way, you're going to have to come back to the counter economy for libertarian change in society. So fuck it. It don't matter. So I don't want this to be too long. I really hope this stuff didn't go over y'all heads. Hope y'all following along with me. I'm always spreading more information about this. If you want a link where you can start your research and really get you can start to get a solid grasp on all this stuff, send me a message. I'll shoot you a link. Peace and laissez-faire.